they don't want you to have that level of confidence.
No.
They want you to believe that you need them. And the only way that they can do that is to constantly do two things. Number one, push the pain points in your life. And number two, show themselves as the only viable solution. And they put the solution out there too, just like any good marketing plan. Here's the problem. You don't benefit from the solution until you're dead. Translation, you will always need us.
Welcome to Unbound,
A podcast for new atheists,
and lifetime atheists,
ex-evangelicals.
truth seekers, and free thinkers.
There is life after faith.
And life here is good. It's time for a new perspective.
And a better conversation. I'm Spider.
And I'm Shelle, and it's time to get unbound.
So, apparently, there is now an actual bona fide litmus test for salvation. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, that's what it's sounding like. I mean, if you want to take
crazy.
Yeah, if you want to take Jim Bakker's word for it, then there absolutely is.
Yes.
I'm Spider.
And I'm Shelle.
And we're going to start out with our Christians Behaving Badly segment, all about one of the most, what's the word? I almost said beloved. I don't want to call Jim Bakker beloved. One of the most, what?
Notorious.
That's a good adjective. One of the most notorious televangelists out there. And he now has this wonderful claim that he can tell right away whether or not somebody is saved, that there is a bona fide litmus test for this. So what is it?
Whether or not you support Donald Trump.
Okay, so are you saved if you do, or are you saved if you don't?
You're saved if you do. If you don't, it's kind of iffy. You're probably going to hell.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm in trouble.
Because, of course, as Christians, we need to be forgiving and loving. And yes, I'm sure he would be all for forgiveness for crooks.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes all the way back to what, the mid-'80s?
In the mid-'70s, actually, 1974, Jim Bakker helped to create the 700 Club. That's now hosted by Pat Robertson, but
I had heard that he was the founder of that. I never saw any episode of that where he was hosting or anything, but for a long time, I thought that was him when it was actually Pat Robertson.
Right. But yeah, he actually was more on the PTL Club. The PTL Club, which stands for Praise the Lord.
Of course it does. What else would it stand for?
And he and his late wife, Tammy Faye, hosted the PTL Club. And they also opened up a community and a theme park called Heritage USA.
Is that still around?
No, it's done. It actually, I think it was demolished in 2007. I'm not 100% certain.
But it's gone.
But it's
way gone.
Gone.
Okay.
No. But unfortunately, in the 80s, he was under investigation and was eventually convicted for misusing church funds. That included an accused rape charge by Jessica Hahn, a former church secretary. There was a lot of mess about that, which I will not get into because he's a scumbag without that.
That whole thing escalated way more than it ever needed to.
Yes. But, he also paid her off. He paid her off with church funds.
Of course. Where else is he going to get the money? And, I mean, with all due respect, is he really going to be worried or concerned about where that money came from or what he had to do to get it? It was going to get him out of a bind, and that really was that.
Yes, it really was. He was convicted. I think he was sentenced to 45 years, but he only served 4.
And do we know why? Because I remember this. I
was
remember
found guilty of fraud.
Yeah, I remember that he was sentenced and that it was a long sentence, and then it's like I blinked and he's kind of back in the spotlight.
Right. Yeah, he was released from prison after serving only 4 years. During that time, he made a complete study of the Bible, decided that the prosperity gospel was wrong, even wrote a book in 1997 saying, I Was Wrong, or I think it was called I Was Wrong. And
We can look that up.
yeah, we can look that up. But despite saying I was wrong, apparently he decided maybe not so much, because he launched a new ministry and community called Morningside in 2003. He has now created a new PTL network. Do we know
I've heard
what
about that.
PTL stands for? Prophets Talking Loud.
You've got to be kidding.
I'm not kidding.
You've got to be kidding.
Nope,
oh, by the
that's
way,
it.
the name of the book, the title of the book is, in fact, I Was Wrong. And I mean, you kind of have to admire his little moment of honesty here.
Right.
I was wrong.
But maybe not so much that I have to give up my entire life and live as a hermit.
Okay, so you can take those 3 words there, I was wrong, and simply replace them with time to rebrand. And you've pretty much got what's going on here.
Yes, time to rebrand. But now he is preaching to the community of Morningside, which is I am not sure what this is. I think it is a condo community. They have cabins, like little log cabins that you can rent. They have a home for unwed mothers on the property, where, of course,
And I'm sure that they're getting the same level of care that they would if they were going through an organization like Planned Parenthood.
Well, you have to submit to the community guidelines. I don't know what those are, but I can't imagine that they're very lenient.
I'm sure it involves attending a lot of services and being subjected to a lot of indoctrination.
Yes, I'm sure it does. But apparently they have like a mini town square inside their main hall. They have a general store, all the things you'd think of for somebody who used to run a amusement park called Heritage USA.
Yeah.
And they have a 15-foot statue of Jesus in the lobby.
That makes me think of the movie Saved.
Yes, it does. Oh,
That was
I love
the first
that movie.
thing I thought of. And yes, if you've never seen the movie Saved, it's streaming in a bunch of places. And even if you have to pay to see it, it is well worth the $5 you're going to give Google. Definitely watch this movie if you have a chance. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled podcast.
Okay, so he is broadcasting. The new ministry focuses on prepping, which is a movement right now for people who are preparing for the apocalypse, whether nuclear or other. And he's selling, well, they can't say he's selling them. He's giving them away for a donation. And I'm sure that donation is fairly steep. He is selling buckets of freeze-dried food that you can reconstitute with water.
Is he hawking a rapture angle with this at all, or is it just doomsday prepping in general?
It's doomsday and rapture wrapped up in one, basically. It's for whatever unrest decides to happen.
So basically he's covering the bases.
Yes, and he's also very doomsday-minded. He's very rapture-minded. He's mostly focused on that now.
The vast majority of evangelicals are, and the vast majority of high-profile evangelicals are, because that is, I'm sorry, but there's money in that sort of thing. There's money in fear. There's money in the concept of themes like violence and destruction and all of that.
Oh, definitely.
And that's why there's so much violence in eschatological content, and that means end times content. Sorry, I did actually do well in Bible college, but that's what that means. For those not in the know, eschatological means end times.
Yes.
So there's a lot of violent end times imagery in what evangelicals do, and this kind of leads into our main topic. So before I go too far into that, is there anything else you want to say about this?
Nope, I think that is just about that. Although a few days after the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, Jim Bakker stated that in a dream, God came to him wearing camouflage, a hunting vest, and an AR-15 rifle strapped to the back, and claimed that God supported Trump's plan to arm teachers.
Wow.
That's the kind of thing he preaches.
That's the kind of thing a lot of them preach, though.
Yes.
Again, a lot of these people are carbon copies of each other. It's just that Jim Bakker is kind of high profile.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of them out there that are hawking the same bullshit doctrine. and bullshit dogma and bullshit everything having to do with this religion. So I'm not quick to point fingers at Jim Bakker in particular for any one thing, because honestly, he's just mirroring and copycatting things that he's seen before and just repackaging and rebranding shit that he's done before. So we were talking off mic about this a couple of minutes ago. The simple fact of the matter is the way that you market to evangelicals hasn't really changed that much.
No.
They seem to still respond to the same kind of emotionalism, sensationalism, the same brands of these things that they did 30 years ago.
It's true.
So certain social things have changed, certain ways of going about doing things have changed in the last 30 years, but the messaging and the outcome, the projected outcome is still the same. And the way that they market their religion has not changed much. If you listen to an Integrity Hosanna CD from, say, 1990, and then listen to one from 2015, 2016, they're going to sound very similar.
Oh, yeah.
And that's true with a lot of things, what I refer to as praisertainment.
Yeah.
Music, visuals, the types of things that appeal to evangelicals when they are, especially when they're in church, because church has become a very visual thing too.
Right.
So there are things that have always appealed to that particular demographic. And this is just a rebranding and repackaging for a 2020 audience. He also wants to expand his demo beyond evangelicals, and that's why he's doing this whole all-inclusive thing.
Yes, especially with the prepping.
Yes, and
that's much more widespread.
And changing the acronym PTL, what is it now again?
Prophets Talking Loud.
Prophets Talking Loud. Is that a prophets with a PH or with an F?
It could be both, but it is PH officially.
Prophets. Okay, so we've got self-proclaimed prophets in this organization too. Sounds like a fun ride. All right, let's get into our main topic. So like I said, what we were talking about toward the end there was a good lead into this, because what we want to talk about this week is the sheer myriad ways that evangelicals use fear to first lure you in and then keep you compliant. And the more you know and understand about what they do, how they do it, and the psychology behind it, the easier it is to build up a barrier to it. And the easier it is to forgive yourself for ever falling for a lot of this stuff, or letting it scare you to the point where you made decisions that affected the rest of your life. Well, the rest of your life up until now, because this is where things start. This is where we start getting things to level off a little bit more, get everybody thinking in a rational way about the things that they believed. But fear is a very powerful emotion, and it doesn't matter what the subject is. If somebody wants to convey a good point, a lot of times it starts by bringing up the fears associated with that point. This is one of the first rules of marketing, actually. One of the first things that I learned when I got into the world of copywriting was the concept of the pain point. And a lot of marketing is built on what we call pain points, and that is the problem that this, or set of problems that this product or service is supposed to solve. So you start off with all the bad things that are happening or could happen because this product isn't in your life. And you come up with points of relatability. You figure out who your audience is and you come up with points of relatability. So at that point, you do what's called pushing the pain points. And you just keep bringing them up throughout whatever advertising or whatever content you're putting out there. You just keep the worst fears that they have in this particular arena right out in front of them. Well, that's precisely what evangelicals do. This isn't really an evangelical thing per se, but they really have gotten good at this kind of marketing, pushing the pain points. And in this instance, it's things like whether or not God loves me, whether or not I'm going to heaven, is hell a real thing? And once they have all of the pieces in place and they've got their story the way that they want it, then they start presenting it in ways that will compel you to do whatever it is that they want you to do at that moment. In marketing terms, we call these conversions, okay? What sort of conversion are you looking for here? And the funny thing is, what do they call it in evangelicalism?
Conversion.
They call it the same damn thing. So in marketing terms, it's called conversions, and there are different kinds of conversions. You could have a goal of having someone simply click through to another website or to a landing page. Your goal could be for somebody to contact you for more information on something. Your goal could be to sell something and to grab that sale. Well, there are different things that you're going to do to bring about each different type of conversion. And even in evangelical terms, even though the initial accepting Christ thing is what they consider conversion, they throw other ones at you all the time. We talked about baptism in the Holy Spirit and feeling inadequate because you can't do it. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the pain points that they plug with that is not achieving spiritual maturity or getting the most out of your faith. And that's when people start going a little bit crazy, and you've got people down at the altar for 5 and 6 hours with people holding their arms up so they can still show their surrender to their deity while they beg and plead for the gift. So we're going to get into some more specific examples of both how they reel you in and how they keep you. But I wanted to start off, and I think that we had a similar experience because you talked about your conversion experience revolving around a thief in the night.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was actually one of my first experiences with this too. And since I have heard all kinds of podcasts throwing all kinds of names around, I'm not going to worry too much about being a little bit more specific going forward, especially since you told me about that one episode of How to Heretic.
Yeah.
With Chrissy Stroop, back then still Chris Stroop, and talking about Word of Life and talking about snow camp. And yeah, I did the snow camp up there too. It was fun kind of going back and forth with them a little bit about those experiences and some of the other people that were in the conversation. But one of my first exposures to the reel them in aspect of this was when I saw the first 2 of those Mark IV movies at Word of Life. That was the first place that showed them to us. And I'm pretty sure I saw them out of order the first time. I'm pretty sure that I saw the second one over the summer and then saw the first one during snow camp. And but I remembered, it's like, oh, so that's what this was all about, and that's why this happened, and that's why this happened. Back then I was kind of into them. Right. And I wasn't afraid of them because by the time I saw these movies, I had already been told that my future was set, that my salvation was secure, and especially in a Baptist environment, Baptist versus Pentecostals, there's a big difference between how these two groups of people view salvation. From a Baptist point of view, once you say that sinner's prayer and you make that public confession, that's it. Yeah. You are saved, and that is that. In Pentecostal circles, the agreed upon belief is that, yeah, there actually are ways that you can lose your salvation. And yet they still tout the whole salvation by grace thing. So right. There's a major contradiction there that no one really seems to want to deal with. And I could never get anyone to adequately deal with it with me either. Not even my youth pastor, who I really, really trusted. But, I also appreciated his honesty, because when he didn't have an answer for something, he didn't give me a bullshit answer. He just told me, I don't know. And, if you ever figure this out, then please tell me. And if I ever figure it out, then I'll tell you, and then we can tell the world. But he was man enough to admit when he didn't know or understand something. And this was kind of one of those areas. But when I saw these movies, I wasn't afraid because I was already saved. There were people in our midst who were clearly freaked out. I saw people leaving the auditorium crying. I saw all kinds of stuff that I honestly, I would assume that this was the kind of emotion that these things were trying to elicit. But I mean, we're talking young kids here, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Right.
And even then, I was wondering what was going through their minds as they were leaving. Was it guilt because they weren't saved or had told other people that they were? Is it that they're concerned about their unsaved loved ones? It really creates a lot of anxiety.
Oh, gosh.
And I didn't see this so much in Baptist circles either, but in Pentecostal circles, it was huge, where they would literally tell you that it was necessary for you to get saved so that you could also save your family.
Right.
And I'm certain that some of those kids were running out of that place scared to death for their unsaved brother, sister, parent, whatever. And, they're afraid, Jesus is going to come back and I'm going to be raptured and my parents are still going to be here.
Yeah.
And I'll never see them again because they're not going to be taken to heaven with me. They're going to be sent to hell. And it's incredible to me, the kinds of things that they shove into young minds.
Yeah.
Now, I will go on record here and state unequivocally that I believed wholeheartedly and still do that the people who ran Word of Life back then and today, the people who run it, let's just say the people who run it, the people who run the organization, I believe have good intentions. I really think that they believe that they are doing good for all of these young people that they minister to. I think that they believe their messaging, and I never got a bad vibe off of anybody there, at least not to the point where I saw any major red flags in anything that they did there. But, you can be sincere, and to quote the second movie in this series, you can be as sincere as you want about what you believe and still be sincerely wrong.
Right. That was always my fear, is that I was wrong. What if I'm wrong? There was this one sort of series of phrases that we would kind of semi-joke about. You're not really joking, but you're kind of joking. It's called, about being saved. It's like, are you sure? Are you sure you're saved? Are you certain? Are you sure you're certain? Just sort of this weird Zen cone for Christian kids who just like whistling in the dark because you don't know. You never know.
Yeah, and it chips away at your confidence and it builds your anxiety. Because the first few times that happened to me, I was able to open up to book, chapter, and verse and just show them, yeah, I'm sure, because it says this here, and it says this here, and it says this here, and I know these words, and I live these words, and I believe in the God behind these words, and that's that. Well, they don't want you to have that level of confidence.
No.
They want you to believe that you need them. And the only way that they can do that is to constantly do two things. Number one, push the pain points in your life. And number two, show themselves as the only viable solution. And that is how they keep you. So before we get too far into that, because that is the next part of what I want to talk about, there were other things that I witnessed early on as scare tactics to draw people in. Now, that, of course, was the entire point of the Mark IV movies, Thief in the Night, Distant Thunder, Prodigal Planet, and Image of the Beast. Image of the Beast. That was, the last two flip-flopped. But those were the four. Honestly, the production value in these movies was awful to begin with, but the first two at least were watchable. The second two, I'm sorry, if this was supposed to scare me more, it just got campier and campier as it went.
Right.
So by the time the fourth movie was done, I really wasn't taking it that seriously anymore.
Right. Unfortunately, I had a different view because I was very new. I was a very new Christian when they showed us these, and it was a different type of religion than I was used to. And these people I trusted because no one else was really giving me guidance. I trusted them. They told me this stuff was going to happen and that it was real. It terrified me for years.
Yeah, and that's why I was just listening to, I think it was in the same episode of How to Heretic, where they were talking about how there's a cathartic aspect to making fun of these kinds of movies. And episode 12 of another podcast that we listen to a lot called God Awful Movies.
Oh, yes.
They actually dealt with A Thief in the Night. And I think that they went on to do all four of them.
I think they did all four. But yeah, listening to them make fun of those movies was probably the best thing I've done.
Oh, yeah.
For everything, for my brain. Mm-hmm. It was fun.
I know I've seen other things mocking it before, and like years before. But the Gamcast guys just they take it next level.
Oh yeah,
they
knock
totally
it out of
do.
The park.
And I absolutely recommend listening to all of these. It starts at episode 12. I'm pretty sure that it's 4 successive episodes, but you'll see them in there. And I absolutely think that you should, once we're done here, just go over and have a listen to that. It's and especially if you're one of these people that was traumatized by them when you were younger, or even younger. I mean, whenever you saw them, because they're going to scare the bejesus out of you, whether you're 5 or 55.
Yeah.
So if you were traumatized by these movies and made decisions that would re-navigate the course of your life over them, a little bit of cathartic mocking of these piece of shit movies is probably going to be a good antidote. For some of that, some of the little needling thoughts. At least you'll be able to laugh about it a little bit. And I think that that's definitely good therapy. Word of Life also did a couple of things back in the 80s, probably into the 90s. I have searched for these things. I don't see any of it on their website anymore. And I can't even find anything on YouTube. And usually, I mean, every high school musical out there is available on YouTube. And I searched and I found absolutely nothing on these. But back in the early mid 80s, and I'm pretty sure well into the 90s, I was still hearing about it. They used to do 3 dramas. The first one was called The Passion Play. And that was what it sounds like. It was an Easter production. Well, it was one that they did a lot around Easter, but it was an evangelistic tool, so they did it year round. You know, they did the Passion Play pretty much all year. The next one was the Daniel drama. It was like an hour-long drama on what they considered to be the most important parts of the book of Daniel. Now, I went to see both of these probably 1 or 2 summers after I started going there. And they really, really hyped them up. They didn't do any of them during camp, but they made sure that we went home with a whole list of places they were going to do it. And since we were living in New York at the time, there were places that were relatively close, and we did attend most of these, mostly because I was on such a Word of Life kick at that point that, my mother wanted to encourage it. She had her own little spiritual awakening, and I wouldn't say things had fizzled out, but things had definitely leveled off. She was impressed by my enthusiasm, so she kind of followed my lead with some of these things, and we did drive some miles to see these dramas. The one I really want to talk about, though, the one that ruined my grandmother's life, was the Revelation drama. Now, you want to talk about scaring people to God? The Mark IV movies had nothing on this. People running around stage screaming at rocks to fall on them. That's the one thing that I remember the most, and I still to this day remember the look on my grandmother's face when it dawned on her that this is in the same Bible that the priests had told her not to read, that they would interpret it for her, and she had never heard any of this.
Right.
And it was kind of like the same thing that happened with me, where I had a good working knowledge of what Christianity was because I was raised Catholic, and I had had some exposure to evangelicalism early on. It was the uniqueness factor of it. It was that I was hearing things that I hadn't heard before. I was getting parts of this message that I felt had been hidden from me. And that was why I embraced it so
Right.
enthusiastically and so quickly, because I felt like I had been told the rest of the story.
Yes.
And my grandmother, I think, reacted to it about the same way, but she had had exposure to concepts like being born again and being filled with the Holy Spirit, because that these were things that were being talked about in the house at that point. So she had a working knowledge of these things going in. But I don't think that she was even remotely prepared to learn what was at the back of the book. And the way that it was portrayed, it was purely and obviously designed to instill fear.
Yeah.
And the way that this guy, I remember his name, but I won't say it. But he was one of the guys that I really, really liked on the island. This is one of the other things that irks me, was his involvement in this, because I liked him.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's hard.
But it was a very, very well thought out and well executed call to action. And that is one of the most important parts of any kind of marketing. As bloggers, we know that you need to have at least one call to action in your blog post if you want anything to happen as a result of that content. So this is the point where they have pushed those pain points for an hour and scared you half to death at the things that are in this book that you probably had no idea of. Because guess what? Most Christians never, ever open up their Bibles outside of church.
Oh, yeah.
So it stands to reason that they would have no clue what's going on in the book of Revelation, or at least what these people interpreted to be going on in the book of Revelation and made a play out of it. So when this guy that I really liked got up to give the altar call, my first thought was, oh, she's going to go down. Because he was very charismatic and he was very compelling, and his tone was always very sincere. Again, these people truly believed in what they were doing, and they didn't see the wrong in it. It still irks me that he was involved and that I was involved with what ended up happening with my grandmother over the course of the next couple of decades. So yeah, he gave this very eloquent altar call, laid out the facts as they were presented in the drama, brought up some of the major pain points that were pushed in the drama. Some of the more emotional moments were brought up as part of this. And this is all toward the end of a good blog post. You're going to do this. You're going to give a final takeaway or something along those lines. And that's what this was. So he mapped everything out. And then here came the sales pitch. And I sat there, and he did the standard every head bowed, every eye closed thing. And I sat there with one eye half open to see what my grandmother was going to do. And yeah, she raised her hand. And then I was wondering if I was going to have to be the one to tell her that I was the equivalent of the camp counselor looking around when every head was supposed to be bowed and every eye closed, and accompany her to the altar. But it never came to that. As soon as that call came out, she was on her feet and she was hooked. And that was that.
Yeah.
You know, the old Catholic lady was gone, and here came evangelical Nana. And evangelicalism slowly but surely chipped away at her good senses and at her sanity over the next couple of decades.
Yeah.
And when she died miserable and depressed and practically alone, because with all of the people that showed up at that memorial service, I don't know of any, and my mother would know better, but I heard all kinds of stories about what she and her husband did for my grandmother toward the end, and I heard no other names involved in this.
No.
My grandmother put in so much time at that church. She, among other things, every single week would bring the printing order to the printer.
Yeah.
And then pick it up and bring it back to the church a couple of days later. This was something that she did every week. People had their programs every week because my grandmother was there to volunteer. Okay? So she was involved. She had been a pew sitter her entire life, because what else are you going to do in the Catholic Church?
Right.
But now she found something that gave her some sense of purpose. And she kept doing it until she couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
But when she couldn't do it anymore, there went all of the supports and praises and accolades that she had gotten used to. And there went her self-esteem, her self-image. There went anything that used to be her.
Yeah.
And it was very sad because I watched her just degenerate into this. I don't want to call her an automaton because she's my grandmother, but it all just became about, I'm done with this world. I really just want to go home and be with Jesus now.
Yeah.
And I can't separate myself from it yet.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about having to forgive yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to let go of the time lost. You have to let go of the things that hurt you and scarred you. But you also have to let go of the scars that you inflicted.
Yeah.
This is not something I'm good at. So I'm not telling you something that I've learned to do. I'm just telling you something that I've learned to be necessary. And there are a lot of things that I'm still working out with this that are part of the religious trauma syndrome. And a big part of it has always been the role that I had in my grandmother getting, quote unquote, saved. Because my grandmother had her issues before. It's just that she became one of those people who found herself in the middle of this group of people where there were many, many, many manifestations of mental illness, and so many of them that she just sort of became camouflaged in with the rest. She just sort of became part of that mosaic of dysfunction that pervades most evangelical churches.
Yeah.
And at the end of her life, where was everybody?
Yeah.
You know, I saw a lot of people at that service, and a lot of people had a lot of nice things to say. Some not terribly accurate things to say.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that was a tough one.
Yeah, I know.
But that notwithstanding, I mean, it was just a testimony to me to how little these people actually knew her. Mm-hmm. We love you, but we don't really want to get to know you.
No.
We love you because we have our program this week. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that it wasn't that surfacey and callous with some of them, but again, where was everybody?
Right.
And I'm sure that if I asked my mother, I would get a small list of names of people who had done things or asked if they could help, or genuinely asked if they could help, because there's a difference between, you know, if there's anything I can do and if I can do X, Y, or Z. There's a big difference there.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that there had to be a small group of people who were actually interested in living the gospel and did reach out to her. But it was a very big group of people in that room that day saying goodbye. Mm-hmm. You see, it's one of those situations of you don't know what you got till it's gone, or you know and you just don't care, and now it's gone and we have to pay our respects. Yeah. The way, when I walked into that service, I just got a vibe. Mm-hmm. And my very first question was, all of these people that are here cheering her memory, where were they when she was dying? Yeah. You know, when she actually needed that support, when she actually needed that positivity, where were they? And, mm-hmm. you know, I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that it speaks loudly to the consequences that can be suffered by not just one person, but by a lot of people when you are involved in something like this. When you know that you played a role in it, it's that much harder. And it all comes back to both she and I being drawn in similar ways, being presented with things that we hadn't thought about before. And that's really what did it for me. I didn't have to be shown violent images of the end of the world, but it did strike me when I was told that I was unclean. You see, no one had ever tried to convey that to me. I had been told that I was a sinner and that I needed to confess because I was a Catholic boy, and confession is part of the thing. But I always considered confession to make things a done deal.
Right.
And then I'm being told, well, no, there's more that you have to do here. And that was what drew me in, was wanting to do things the right way.
Right.
And I'm sure that that was what drew my grandmother in too, was that she wanted to follow the right path. And she simply decided in a heartbeat that she had not been for her entire life and that this was it. So their marketing worked marvelously.
Yeah.
And it still does, because they're still there and they're still doing the same things and they're still ruining lives. But as I've said many times before, do not point fingers at the individual. This is something that has been generations in the works with just this organization alone.
Right.
So be careful where you point your fingers. Just make your voice heard. Make sure that when you see something wrong with the way that these people do things, that you approach it respectfully, but with conviction and with facts. Definitely with facts, not just opinions. The way that they get people to accept this religion at times is, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong. Playing on people's emotions to the point where you are scaring them to God is wrong. And it doesn't have a high retention factor either.
No, it doesn't.
Because as soon as people go home and they think about things a little bit and their rational mind has time to think about things a little bit again, they aren't quite as freaked out. And I think I said this in the first episode. Sometimes people get saved on Saturday night, and by Sunday morning, they don't have the motivation anymore because their rational mind kicked in and said, yeah, I don't really know about this. And not everybody is that strong. Not everybody is that smart coming out of the gate.
Right.
And that's why this is such a problem. But I'll tell you, what they do to hook you isn't anywhere near as nefarious as what they do to keep you. Let's talk about a couple of things. Ever hear of a little drama called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames? Ugh. We know about it.
Yeah,
we know about it. And we actually dragged your father to that one night.
That was probably one of the worst things I have ever had my father do. I mean, that's like, no. That was a bad idea.
But we thought
we
were doing something that was going to benefit him.
We had just lost my mother, and I wanted him. I guess I wanted him to be with her when he died.
Of course.
I mean, I just wanted him to be happy.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see where you're coming from there, because I didn't see a whole lot of happy from him.
No.
I did not see a whole lot of contentment. I saw a lot of turmoil in his head. I mean, your mother's too, but your mother seemed to be able to level herself just a little bit better.
She did not have the issues with anxiety that my father obviously did.
Oh, yeah. Hindsight is 20/20.
Right.
Back then, we didn't know what it was, or I didn't know what it was. I just knew that something was off.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the older I get and the more I learn about anxiety, my own and other people's, the more I see it in how he acted as I was growing up and knowing him as an adult.
Now, what do you think a drama like Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames is going to do to someone with anxiety?
No, I just know what it did to me. Made me more anxious.
Yeah. And just to add insult to injury, we were so into what these people were doing, and we supported it so wholeheartedly. We actually sat through that thing, 3 times?
Yes, we did.
Because I think, what was the purpose of that? They just wanted church support.
Yeah.
Or I don't think I was a volunteer. I don't think that I was working the altar.
I don't know. You did a few things for the church while we were there.
Yeah, mostly involved playing piano.
Yeah.
That was it.
But I didn't realize it when they came around, but it's actually like a package deal. These people sell you the package for the play. They sell you all the materials for the set. They tell you how to build everything. They give you the script. They give you the music. You buy it.
Yeah, but that's standard for like any high school musical
Right.
too. So
Right.
and that's just them mimicking the market the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But the production value on this, I have to say, was a little bit better than average.
Right.
But it was so in your face, and it was so violent and so negative.
Right.
And some of the most just ridiculously unlikely
Right.
scenarios
Yeah.
out there. Because these are not the types of tragedies that happen every day that you have to be worried about as being imminent in your life.
Right.
You know, an entire family being taken out in a car wreck, that sort of thing. And that was just one example. There were so many examples in this drama, and just the way that they presented how this loving God deals with you at the point of death should be enough to tell anybody that they're not dealing with a loving God.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But we didn't see it that way at the
No.
time. We saw it as, this is God's universe. We are God's people. We are his creation, and he can do with it what he wants.
Right.
Well, then why did he make us think about him in this way? Why did he create reason? Why did he create rational thought when all that was going to do is turn people against him?
Right.
It makes no sense. I'm made in his image and likeness. That's at least what the Bible says, that I am the image and likeness of my creator. Well, if that's true, then he must be schizophrenic or something. I don't know. Because on the one hand, he wants me to be this mindless automaton that just follows this religion. But on the other, I have his nature, which obviously includes things like logic and reason.
Right.
So how do you reconcile those two things? You simply don't.
No.
You simply start painting a picture of this deity as being loving when there is absolutely no evidence of that anywhere in the Bible.
You know, we are sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yes, I forget who the preacher was for that. Do you remember
Was it
who
Jonathan
that was?
Edwards? It was early. It was during the First Great Awakening in the 1700s.
Very, very, very early. Yep, that was Jonathan Edwards. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. I seem to recall reading this at one point. I don't quite remember, and I'd rather not.
I'd rather not now.
I'd rather not, because once I start reading, I'll remember all of it. And like I've said before, things that I'm researching for this podcast are bringing things to the surface that can be a little stressful to deal with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's not a complaint. It's just an observation. It's kind of a side effect of this that I'm thinking about this stuff so much more lately, that it does start to churn things up. Mm-hmm. My therapist agrees that I have at least a mild case of religious trauma syndrome, because a lot of the problems that I've had with relationships, with my family, they all tend to gravitate back toward this kind of thinking and not being able to get my brain out of certain modes. So that, you know, if I go back in here and start reading this, it's going to just dredge up more.
Right.
So I'm going to take my own word for it that I've seen this before, and we're going to leave it at that. But it's just another example of what we've been talking about here, of how once they've got you hooked, this is the type of thing they do to keep you.
Right.
They keep pushing those pain points, reminding you why you are there. Mm-hmm. And it's such a brilliant plan, because they keep reminding you why you're there. And they put the solution out there too, just like any good marketing plan. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem. You don't benefit from the solution until you're dead. Translation, you will always need us.
Right.
And that right there is, it's a huge part of why people get in this. And even when their rational minds tell them otherwise, they stay with it.
Yeah. Part of the reason I was so, I need to stay in this is because I was never confident in my salvation, because I already had self-esteem issues. I figured if I was terrible enough that Jesus Christ had to die on the cross for my sins, I couldn't leave. I could never, ever even think that the doubts that I had were anything legitimate. I had to believe, because if I didn't, I would be going to hell.
Yeah. And that was more of a Pentecostal thing, because once you got saved at Word of Life, they were very, very adamant about making sure that you understood that this wasn't something you could lose.
Right.
The Pentecostals have a better marketing plan.
Right.
Because you can lose it.
Yeah. I didn't get exposed to Baptist thinking at all.
Right.
It was all Pentecostal all the way down.
And you know what? I'm glad that I had a few different flavors of evangelicalism to sample before I settled in with the Assemblies of God.
Right.
Because I got a really clear image of how different these beliefs are. And it was always a question in my mind of why, if we all believe the same Bible and we agree that the Bible is the Word of God, then why are there so many different interpretations of this? Where on earth do the Baptists get this concept that the gifts of the Spirit stopped being a thing with the completion of the Word of God? Where is that in the Word of God?
Right.
It's not there because it's just somebody's opinion. Not that the entire Bible isn't just somebody's opinion, but certain doctrines, they just seem to have a very vacuous beginning and an even more vacuous explanation. There are certain things that they just, like, even my youth pastor, like we were talking about before, there are certain things that are just so driven by logic that there's no spiritual answer for them, unless you decide you want to come up with something that's complete and total bullshit right off the top of your head, which plenty of people do anyway. But we're not talking about widespread beliefs or opinions or anything that people are out there and evangelizing over. It's just, idle stupidity that comes out of people's heads. But this type of coercion and this type of scare to God tactic, it continues to this day. And I love how one of the biggest things that they do now coincides with a holiday that they're supposed to hate. Because every October, instead of going to your local haunted house, you can go to your church's hell night and tour their hell house. Now, let's just make sure we understand a couple of things. The Bible says next to nothing about hell and what is there. And there are only a few nebulous references to it. This place of darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth that Jesus talks about repeatedly is what a lot of people will turn to and say, well, he told us that there's a hell. But that's all he ever said about it, really.
Yeah.
Until you get to the book of Revelation and you start seeing stuff about the lake of fire and eternal torture and torment and all of that. But those are two very nebulous concepts. They don't go into a whole lot of detail. No one in Scripture goes into a whole lot of detail about what hell is, only that it's going to be bad. Well, that leaves a lot of room to wiggle, doesn't it? And Dante's Inferno, and who was Paradise Lost? Milton? Yeah. These two literary texts, these two bits of prose are where most of the doctrine about hell that you hear about comes from. And evangelicals like to kind of oversimplify it and just skip directly to the lake of fire.
Right.
Okay? So they don't have the 7 or 10 circles or whatever it is in Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, it's 9.
Yeah, it's 9 circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. Baptists aren't concerned with that. Neither are the Pentecostals.
No.
They just want you to know that you're just going to go get yourself barbecued for all eternity if you do not turn and follow Jesus. So they just cut directly to the chase. They take out all of the extraneous crap. Just look at some Catholic lore about hell and what's believed is there and all of that. It's so crazy and so over the top. It's like they must have had better weed back then, because I mean, where the hell else did this come from? Weed, shrooms, they had some good shit, and it's the only explanation for people coming up with this stuff and then being able to get other people to believe it. It had to be some kind of group delusion to begin with. That's all I'm saying about that. But you've got the Hell Knights. You've got even now they use those damn Mark IV movies.
Yep.
And even though they're dated, they can still scare the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Just from the standpoint of what it all entails. And another thing in that how-to episode was the whole concept of rapture anxiety.
Yes.
And yeah, believe me, I had it.
Oh, yeah.
I had it. And it was something that I constantly worried about because I also doubted my own salvation a lot. And that was definitely by design. The first couple of years, I had a very firm-footed apologetic. But closer to when I went to college, there were other things that had happened along the way. And especially being introduced to the concept of being able to lose your salvation, because I got it drilled into me from day one that I couldn't. And now I was in an environment where I was being told I could. So that little seed of doubt right there was enough to get me back to the altar time after time after time. Hey, God, just wanted to reiterate here. Yeah, I don't want to go to hell. So here I am at the altar again, just in case you missed it the last 17 times. Because I kind of asked for the baptism in the Holy Spirit about 17 times and I never got that. So I figure I'm just going to keep asking for this until I know I've got it.
Yeah.
It's crazy how they get you to start thinking along those lines, but it's good marketing.
Yeah.
They have convinced you that you need them. Let's talk about some of the more everyday tactics that they use. And this is in every church service. This is in every activity. And it's an undercurrent in pretty much everything that they do. There are several key things that you need to look for and understand that these things are being used to manipulate you, okay? They play on your emotions like to the nth degree. They do everything that they can to evoke guilt and shame over your past mistakes, even these ones that are supposed to have been covered under the blood the first time that you got saved.
Oh, God.
They will still bring you back to things that you did, things that you thought. And it's crazy how they will continue making you remember things that are supposed to have already been forgiven.
And also magnifying those things. Like, oh, do you have a testimony? Oh, if you had any type of exploration with the occult, you could blow that up into like a 15-minute testimony.
You could blow it up into a career, just as Mike Warnke. That was one of the big ones for me, and it still is. And it's one of the main reasons why I have so much of a problem with self-forgiveness. Number one, I spent most of my life believing that forgiveness came from outside.
Yeah.
That's a big problem, and it is something that I still wrestle with. People forgive me for things, sometimes years before I forgive myself for them. And there are some things that I still hold on to, that I still cling to and will not let go of. Not because I don't want to, not because I don't believe it's necessary, but because this head of mine still can't. There's still work to be done. And I took care of a big one over Christmas.
Yeah.
And that was the direct result of our Surviving the Holidays episode, where I listened to the episode to proof it before we sent it out into the wild blue yonder, and heard some of my own words needling at me so bad that I decided that it was time to take action on something that had been festering for years, and finally got resolved and out on the table. And I think that it's going to push other things forward. I really think that what happened over Christmas is going to make other good things happen down the road. So there was one example of me getting past a huge hurdle, but there are still plenty more. There are still people in my head. There are still situations that I can do absolutely nothing about because people have died or because other circumstances prohibit me from making something right or really making something right. And I know that forgiveness has happened already, but I'm not letting myself go. I'm not letting myself have a break. And a lot of it comes back to this concept of them evoking guilt and shame to keep you in that pew and to keep you there as many times a week as they can get you there. My next bullet point here is the threats of hell. We've already gone through this with the Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames thing. vivid descriptions that come literally from nowhere, except from, the head of the speaker.
Right.
The next one is the one that I found to be uniquely Pentecostal, and that being the notion that your God will abandon you if you backslide.
Yes.
And there was so much broad interpretation of what that meant, what your intention was. Do you intend to not be a Christian anymore? Do you intend to live a sinful life? Do you intend to not at least take into consideration what would Jesus do? And if you step one toe out of line without then almost instantly recognizing your need to repent, for that window of time, your name is no longer in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's like God is sitting there with a jar of ecclesiastical whiteout waiting for you to fuck up. I think I've said that before on this show. It's maddening to me how skewed the messaging is there, because if salvation is a free gift, I don't know about anybody else, but I've never walked up to somebody that I've given a gift and asked them for it back.
Right.
Okay? Either it's a gift or it's not. Get your fucking story straight. Sorry, that's still a real touchy point for me.
Yes.
This was a huge one that they used at Word of Life, the whole "you've been warned" thing. So this was, and they did this the very first night. I was at the altar and listening to this guy say this to this group of people, okay? It's like, now you've been warned. If you are sitting here tonight and you are making the conscious decision not to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you are making the conscious decision that you want to go to hell.
Oof. Yeah.
And I mean, he said it in those words, or in words that were very, very close to that. And the whole concept here, the other point to that is that you are now without excuse.
Right.
So now you're going to carry this fear out of this place with you, and it will eventually draw you back. That's the whole point of that. They tell you, you've been warned. So if you walk out of here with unconfessed sin on your heart, and if you walk out of here without accepting Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, woe betide you if you get into a car accident and die, because you will go to hell. And that is shoved on you in Baptist circles.
Yeah.
I didn't get it that much in Pentecostal circles. They were a little bit more subtle about the hell stuff.
Right.
But not by much, but definitely a little. They weren't quite as in your face as this, but I did hear more than one Pentecostal preacher say basically the same thing, that now I was without excuse.
Right.
So that's another major one. And I touched on this last one a little bit earlier, where they will then turn around and guilt you over the fact that your loved ones probably aren't saved either.
Right.
So all the people that you love that are not here tonight, do this for them. Do this and be the example. Accept Christ and go home and tell your family that they need to accept him too. So that's another major one that they hold over you, because on that first night, that first moment where you're deciding whether or not you're going to accept what they're saying, it's impactful because now you're not just thinking about you, you're thinking about your entire family. But this concept keeps coming up over and over and over and over again. And I remember, this is another one that I stumped my youth pastor with. I just thought of this off the cuff, so I didn't look up the reference, but most people will know what I'm talking about, where there's one point where someone asked Jesus what they need to do to be saved, and his answer is it was a standard answer about repenting and asking for forgiveness for your sins, and you will be saved. And then there's the line that's tagged on here that you don't really see anyplace else, where it says you and your whole house.
Right.
So there were some who believed that you could get saved for your entire family.
Yeah.
And then there were some that took a little bit more of a practical approach to this, where they said, well, what that basically means is that you go and take what you learned and you be the example to your family and draw them in, because it's still a personal thing, but it ups the odds considerably that they're going to follow suit if you go home and just start evangelizing the shit out of them right now. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, that one I saw come up sporadically. It wasn't something that I felt like they punched too much. At least not in Pentecostal circles. It was a lot more about the individual and making individual decisions, or basically following along with what they said, not really making your own decision. They made the decision and you chose to accept it. That was pretty much the way that it worked. And the guilt aspect of this.
Oh, yeah.
You have to share the gospel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You have to evangelize. You have to fulfill the Great Commission. Otherwise, like you walk by someone, and I have been told this again in the more hardline denominations like the Baptists. I had people tell me that if I wasn't witnessing to the person that I bought my hamburger from at McDonald's, and that person died and went to hell, their blood was on my hands.
Yes. And that terrified the crap out of me.
No shit, because you're not going to witness to every person you meet.
Right. But not even that. It's just that I had a hard time talking to anyone, much less somebody I was trying to witness to.
And you're far from the only one.
Right.
Another source of anxiety.
Terrible anxiety. And I remember for my evangelism class in college, I had to write a letter. I had to write an evangelistic letter to a relative.
Did they make you send it?
Yes.
Who'd you write to?
My grandmother's widowed husband.
Oh, jeez.
He's a pastor. I didn't know he is a retired pastor, but apparently he was.
Did he respond to you?
Yes, he did. He was very, very generous and gentle about it, and said, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. He was a really good man.
It was the right way to handle that, that's for sure.
Yeah, he was a very, very good man.
I try to remind myself, even when what some of these people do and say pisses me off to no end, and there's a lot that they say and do that pisses me off to no end, I just keep trying to remind myself, unless they have shown me otherwise, they mean well.
Yeah.
They mean well.
Yeah.
This is what they have been taught is right. They are concerned about me. This is how they're expressing it. It would be nice if they could just express it, but this is how they are expressing it, and they're concerned, and you should be grateful that someone is concerned about you. Don't jump all over their doctrine. Don't jump all over their beliefs, and try to be loving back, you know? Mm-hmm. Because if they're doing this, they're doing it because they believe that it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's important to acknowledge the person.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to thank them for this marvelous revelation that they've bestowed on you. And you can let them down easy, just like the way that you described. You can do it in a way that mirrors back the love that they were trying to show you. Or you can be the one who, I don't even know if I want to bring up the guy's name, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Got a letter from his mother, or a Christmas card from his mother that had an even evangelistic message. Why can't I say that word tonight? It had an evangelistic message.
Yeah, don't say his name.
And he basically just went off on his parents about it. Yeah. Now, he tells this story very publicly and doesn't seem to see the wrong in it, but there's all kinds of wrong with it. There are a lot of things that he says that I agree with completely, and I think that he's incredibly smart, but he's dead wrong in this case. Yeah. And, you know, and especially that we're talking about his parents. Yeah. There's a limit to how far you can push back. And that was one of the things that got worked out over Christmas, was that over time I've learned that those limits exist, especially when you're in someone else's house. And there comes a point where you just have to be a little tolerant, and you have to understand where these things come from, because they don't always come from a place of manipulation. They almost never do. It's the system that's manipulative, not the person.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we keep that in mind. Other things that they keep you scared about. You can't have premarital sex, obviously. But some of the worst information that I ever got about sex and sexual health came from youth group and church-related resources.
Right.
They tout very, very inaccurate information about a lot of things, from birth control. We've talked about this on this show.
Oh, yeah.
To the emotional repercussions of having sex with someone you're not married to, because you couldn't possibly just be with someone and have a good time and have that be all it's about. No. It has to involve your entire body, mind, and soul.
Right.
Well, for some people that's true. Some people have those kinds of specific needs, but not everybody does.
Right. And, half the time the repercussions come from the guilt that's being inflicted on you by the people in your life who are telling you that it's wrong and bad and you'll be like a piece of chewed gum.
Oh, God, don't even get me started on that.
And that analogy has been around for a long time. I've heard chewed gum, piece of used tape.
The used tape one is
crumpled paper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything.
Yeah. I've definitely heard all of those in different contexts.
You never really hear about it, in regards to men, but women are usually the chewed gum and the used tape.
Yeah, it's true. But I will say, another thing that I'll say of Word of Life about is that they did, in their messaging, they were very balanced about that.
Yeah.
They made sure that the boys understood that they had a responsibility to remain pure also. So it wasn't something that was just pushed on the girls, at least not in that setting. And honestly, I didn't see it much in the Pentecostal circles either. There was a decent amount of balance in that particular messaging, mostly because they wanted to control everybody sexually.
Right.
Because with all due respect, if they can control your private parts and they can control your wallet, they can control anything about you.
That's true.
And they know it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why these concepts keep coming up and why they keep drilling their own opinions into your head about them. They want you to be in that mindset. Now, can I tell them about our honeymoon, the first week of our marriage?
Sure.
Okay. So now that I have permission, Michelle and I were each other's first. And it was very, very rough going at the beginning because of the thinking that had been put in my head about sex. It made it very difficult for my very evangelical mind at the time to reconcile something that was sin 24 hours ago now being A-okay.
Yeah.
And my body and my mind kind of got in cahoots and would not allow anything to happen that night. Our wedding night and the next 6 or 7 nights after, through our entire honeymoon, were duds. And it had almost everything to do with me not being able to reconcile that this was okay now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was crazy. It was something that we looked forward to.
Right.
A lot. And for good reason. And then couldn't seal the deal for more than a week.
Yeah. And
then when we finally did, we were so I don't want to say anxious, but it was a priority at that point for us to get this done. And in a moment of spontaneity and with absolutely no protection,
woo-hoo,
it finally happened.
Yeah.
And of course, now we've got anxiety because what if she got pregnant?
Right.
And there were all kinds of thoughts that raced through my head about that. So now it turned into a bad thing again. And then it was another couple of weeks until we went to see your gyno.
Yeah.
Before we actually did anything again.
Right.
Because it was a little bit traumatic. We managed it a couple of times.
Well, yeah.
But the fear over not having the right precautions in place made it difficult for us to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that was when we went to talk to your gyno about
Right.
different options because you had tried a couple of things and they weren't working out and they were
Oh,
very
yeah.
uncomfortable and it was just not a good thing. And getting our fears allayed over what the pill actually does,
Yeah.
that it isn't an abortive measure like
No.
we had been led to
Yeah.
believe that it was.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, we have a little bit more freedom. We're able to be a little bit more spontaneous, and we know each other just well enough that all of a sudden we kind of got in sync and things started getting really, really good. But that first week was hell, and it was hell on you. Me waking
Right.
up in the middle of the night with you crying, thinking that it had something to do with you when it didn't.
Right.
And this is just another example of what these people do to you and how deep they get inside your head.
Yeah.
Because if I feel conflicted about something I'm doing sexually, it's pretty much not going to happen.
Oh, of course.
And I mean, honestly, I don't want to say that it's a to this day thing because, what other point of reference would I have? But a lot of times those thoughts do come back, especially there are certain moments and certain things that happen where my brain will go back
Yeah.
to that and it will become difficult for a little while. But, we always get past it, but it amazes me that this many years later,
Yeah.
that certain things can still have that kind of an effect. And it certainly isn't moral conflict anymore. It's more, I don't know, from the male perspective, maybe performance anxiety a little bit. I don't really know where it comes from, but every now and then those kinds of thoughts will creep in like, maybe this isn't such a good idea. And my brain and my body get in cahoots. And no matter how much I try to force the issue, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it does go back to that because I know what's going through my head when these little episodes occur. And it all goes back to our honeymoon, our wedding night, me waking up to you crying. These things just keep coming back. And that makes it that much harder to get back on track. So that's what they can do to your sexual health and to your sexual psychology. So be warned, it's part of the marketing plan. So just a couple more quick ones here before we wrap things up. There's the whole notion of having to go to church. You can't forsake the gathering together of the brethren or whatever that verse says. Yeah. And they will guilt you. They will guilt you about not going to church. Mm-hmm. My mother used to get greeting cards if she missed Sunday school.
Oh, yeah.
If you missed one Sunday, someone knew you weren't there and put you on a list to get a card. So, and it was always just this sweet little message. Hey, we missed you. What they're saying is we're watching you and we know you're not here. It's not about, hey, we're concerned you weren't in church. No, it's we know you weren't in church. Mm-hmm. That's the underlying message, okay? And my youth pastor at one point took this concept kind of to the nth degree with a little program that he affectionately referred to as peer care. Let me explain to you what this was. Every Thursday night, those of us who were really hardcore about this would gather at the church. We'd eat some pizza or whatever got brought in for us to have. We would have a meal together, and then we would all dive into one of the church vans. There were usually only like 4 or 5 of us. Everyone else was smart enough to stay away from this one. But there were probably 4 or 5 of us that got into the van, and the whole purpose of this was to literally drive around to people's houses, kids that hadn't been to youth group in a few weeks, and just sort of visit with them for a little while and invite them back to youth group and try and get a decision out of them to come to youth group. Well, I can't get a ride. Well, we can send the van. I mean, there was an answer, and this is another thing in good marketing and good salesmanship, is being able to overcome objections. So it's all marketing. It is all marketing. So we had the objections. And we knew what our answers were going to be. They weren't, and he was very adamant about not memorizing. Memorize the concept, but not the paragraph, you know? And say this in your own words, but this is what we want to come back with if they say this, this, or this. So there was a whole marketing angle to that too. You want to talk about being in church? This is what my week looked like. Let's start on Sunday, 2 services, morning and evening. And if there were other things going on, then I could very well have been there mid or late afternoon after we've had our Sunday dinner. I could be back there. So 3 services plus whatever I was doing with the youth group. Okay. That was just Sunday. Usually you got a respite on Monday. On Tuesday, it was the Christian Taekwondo class. Okay. So now I'm back on Tuesday. Wednesday was family night, and there were always youth classes. This was different from youth group, but we were there pretty much every Wednesday night too, for another hour and a half to 2 hours. Thursday, for a short stint, this didn't go on for long, but Thursday night was peer care. And then on Friday was youth group. So I'm basically spending most of my life at church and doing absolutely nothing else social.
Right.
And it's not that I got invited to so many parties. I didn't. It's not that I had so many friends in high school. I really didn't. But the fact that my entire life centered on being in this building when I wasn't in my house or in school was, it was all part of the plan.
Yeah.
And as I've said many times before, I was always too smart for this. But there was just too much acceptance going on. And there was too much of my ego being stroked going on for me to ignore it and not want to be there. So believe me, they made it worth my while. They really tickled my brain into being there as much as I was by building me up to look like something that I really wasn't. And then that I found out that I wasn't when I first set foot on campus at Valley Forge.
Right.
You know, but that whole concept of you have to go to church really extends way beyond just Sunday, and they will guilt you into not being involved in everything that the church is doing.
Yeah.
The rest of these, I feel like we can wait on. We've talked about some of this stuff, and we'll talk in depth about some of it. I've got tithing on here. That's a whole episode in and of itself, so I'm going to leave that one alone. So this is the part of the show where I kind of turn my head to the current and former evangelicals that are listening, because I got messages for both of you. To the former evangelical, figure out what about some of this stuff there is to laugh about, because a lot of it is very laughable, and it may have scarred you and it may have damaged you, but take a leaf from God Awful Movies book and start with episode 12 and feel good about watching this stuff being mocked, because that's all it's worth. Don't let your brain go back to these things with any semblance of guilt over what you believed as a result of being exposed to them. Whether it was the Mark IV movies, whether it was some drama, or just some really overwrought sermon that brought you to the altar. Whatever it was, start looking at it from the standpoint of absurdity, and it will become easier to deal with. Okay. And that's why I say that podcast, great place to start, because you'll learn how to do it. Your brain will just start doing it with everything. I mean, mine has been for a while. It's just been doing it like that with a lot of this stuff for a while. I find the funny in it, because if I don't find the funny in it, then I'll just start screaming over it again. So, and there's plenty of funny. There's plenty to laugh at. And I think that it's important to start looking at things from a less serious perspective when it comes to the stuff that hurt us in the past. I think it's very important to do that. The other thing that you need to understand is that your rational mind at one point or another told you that this stuff, that there was nothing to it. And I've said many times before that I don't believe that at the end of the day, most Christians even believe in concepts like hell, because how could they? And think about their husbands, wives, children, or anyone else that they may have lost, parents, grandparents, cousins, whoever, who they have lost, who they know were not saved, and be able to live one moment of their lives outside of absolute torment over the fact of what's happening to those people right now. If they really believed in it, I think that it would have more of an impact on their lives, and I think that it would destroy more people's lives. Most people have enough good sense and enough capacity for rational thought to at least subconsciously not really believe this stuff. Maybe their conscious mind believes it, but there is definitely a barrier in there. Otherwise, I cannot imagine a mother losing her child knowing that he was unsaved and not going completely and utterly insane at the notion of what's happening to him right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm not saying, oh, I don't believe you believe that. I believe that you believe. If you're still in this, I believe that you believe it. But just think about what I just said. Why does it not bother you more to think about people that you love going through this? The reason is that your rational mind won't really let that through.
Yeah.
And be thankful, because that barrier is necessary for you being able to at least stay sane through this. And those of you who have come out understand a little bit better what I'm talking about. The barrier that your rational mind puts up to this, sometimes it's a little thin and staticky, and sometimes it's very, very solid. For me, it was always solid, because even though I stayed in for more than 2 decades, I always knew that there were things wrong with what I believed. And I just sort of retreated to, well, my faith is personal, so I have to deal with these things. The last thing that I want to leave you with is to simply not be afraid. Because whether you're still in it or you're out of it, there are lingering fears. And just make the decision to not be afraid. It's easier said than done, but the more you do it and the more you make that decision over and over and over again, like they want you to do going down to the altar, the more it sticks. And once you have found your way out of that kind of thinking, you need to also commit to finding your way out of fear, because it's one vital and integral piece to you becoming and staying unbound. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Unbound. Show topics are chosen based on their timeliness, relevance, and social impact. Have suggestions for future topics? Email us at unbound.podcast.network@gmail.com with all your comments and feedback. Please don't forget to like, share, and throw a few 5-star ratings our way, and follow us on all major social platforms. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Links to our social pages, as well as a full list of cited sources in today's episode, are listed in the show notes, available at our website, getunbound.org. That's get-unbound.org. If you value this resource and would like to see it continue, please consider supporting us on Patreon at the link in the show description. And be sure to check for new updates every Sunday when we'll come together again and take one more step toward getting and staying unbound.